Welcome to Unshielded, the podcast where we explore the cutting edge of blockchain, data protection, and the quest for a more equitable and accessible internet. Today, we have a truly special guest joining us. I'd like to welcome Maurício Magaldi. He's head of product at Midnight with a rich background spanning from drumming to CrossFit, as well as decades of experience in finance and blockchain. Mauricio always brings a unique perspective to the world of decentralized tech. In this episode, we'll explore the groundbreaking features of Midnight, its roadmap to Mainnet, and how the community can play a pivotal role in shaping its future. We'll discuss the importance of zero-knowledge proofs, the data-protecting smart contracts of Midnight, and other features that set the technology apart. Plus, we'll dive into the challenges and opportunities of scaling digital assets in traditional finance. Mauricio, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm most excited about this. This has been a long time in the running, and happy to be here.
Very happy to welcome you to the Unshielded podcast. Very happy to see a show about Midnight with you featuring front and center. Now, you've been deeply involved in the development of Midnight from its inception. What motivated you to join the Midnight project, and what aspects of the Midnight vision were most compelling for you as you joined?
So Midnight has been a very interesting experience for me in the sense that before running into Bitcoin, back in 2014, I already worked as a data governance professional. So data protection, then the introduction of legislation like GDPR in Europe, LGPD in Brazil, which is a tropical version of GDPR. I had the opportunity of working in financial services as a chief data officer, either taking care of those aspects or implementing the compliance to those pieces of legislation as they came into effect. It kind of blended with my work with blockchain back when I was with IBM, because that's when GDPR kicked in. So there was a lot of overlap between my experience working with blockchain and my experience working as a chief data officer with respect to data protection. So when I learned about Midnight, it was in one of those Messari world of Bitcoin, world of Cardano reports, and I found out there was, they're doing this, data protection blockchain. It kind of forced me to pay attention to the Cardano ecosystem, because I hadn't heard of anything similar. And one of the pitfalls of trying to implement the so-called permission chains on enterprises was that by the time you have your competitors and your suppliers on the same infrastructure, everyone could see everything. And obviously, if I am a retailer and my price and volume data is floating around on an immutable shared database, that is not great for business. So those were some of the instances that permission chains and the ways that they were devised didn't really work. So having a public chain, which kind of became the norm and businesses are starting to tap into, with an added layer of data protection at its core, made a lot of sense. So that kind of spiked my interest. And then, as history will have it, you and I spoke about being, a part of the team. And, I spoke to Eran and the rest of the team. And after a couple of months, we kind of agreed how I would join and how I would contribute. So I'm really excited. And I think we've done great up until now, and there's a lot more for us to do. So it's super exciting time to be involved.
Certainly is. And let's jump straight into some of the technology. As most know, zero-knowledge proofs are a foundation of Midnight's data protection offering. Talk us a little bit through how zero-knowledge proofs enhance data protection and security when it comes to blockchain applications, because it's not something that everybody really knows about.
The easy way to understand zero-knowledge proofs, I mean, you can talk to the cryptography team at Midnight, and they'll school you on the depths of cryptography. I'm not a cryptographer, so bear with me on that. But the way we try to represent zero knowledge is zero knowledge help you protect data by not exposing the data and allowing you to inform your counterparts about what the data is about. So think about, I love the Wally example, Waldo or Wally, depending on where in the world you are. That is a zero knowledge proof exercise, because the exercise will tell you, the activity will tell you everything about Wally or Waldo without telling you where it is. So you can actually perform a lot of investigation and continue to use the game gradually and enjoy the game, more importantly, even though you won't know until at the very end where you find Waldo and, oh, it was behind, the horse, below the orange tree and all that stuff, right? So the information you get before you finally find Wally is a zero knowledge proof of where Wally is. And it's very interesting to see that application because obviously this is a very kind of Eli 5 example, but in the business world, most of the time, the data that is being used to perform business activities is query about what it represents. It's not about what the data actually is. So the classic example we give when we talk about zero knowledge proof is age proof, right? If you're going into a bar and you're ordering, an alcoholic beverage, they'll ask to see your ID. I mean, maybe yours, not mine for sure, but they'll ask for your ID and they want to know when you were born. It's not that they're trying to know your name, the number of your driver's license, or even see where you live, or depending on how much data the ID has. They were trying to see if the photo that's there is actually you, meaning they want to match the document to your face. And they want to know if that photo of you is above a date that's beyond 18 years old or 20 years old, depending on where you're trying to get through. Zero knowledge version of that story is asking your document if you're above 18 or above 21. That's all that matters to the security guy or the bartender, right? So when we extend this to other applications and other data elements in the world of business, we can start to simplify how businesses take hold of data, store data, curate, and obviously reduce the exposure of these businesses to data leakage or data exploits or any other sorts of security attacks that then require them to pay insane amount in fines and expose a bunch of the customers and suppliers' data out into the world. So we start to reduce the demand and the cost associated with securing data by just having a zero knowledge proof represent the information that's needed for businesses to perform their activities, which in a sense is very interesting. It's also increasing security because zero knowledge proofs, they exist in the context of the businesses that are being run. So if someone else gets a hold of your zero knowledge proof in another context, well, they can't do anything about it. They can't use it. It's not exploitable. So it's very interesting to see that there's such an advanced form of cryptography is finally making it this inroad into the business world. And that's pretty much why we chose to use that type of cryptography to enable Midnight.
So it's very much about sharing proofs of data rather than the data itself. Given we've got you here and your background is significantly in TradFi and banking space, I want to talk about the challenges that TradFi is facing when it comes to scaling digital assets. We hear a lot about real-world assets. We hear a lot about tokenization of assets and the huge potential that's there. But there have been some obstacles to date, and we haven't maybe necessarily seen the widespread adoption of use of decentralized technology in finance as yet. What's getting in the way?
So I think there's two, maybe three items that have slowed down or even prevented some players in the industry to come in and tap into digital assets more widely. I think the first is, and it will continue to be, regulatory clarity. I think this is one. Financial services is a highly regulated market. There are very significant differences in regulation across different jurisdictions, across, if you're in the United States, even across states, you have different angles in how regulators see financial services and financial products. So I think the pace in which regulators can change is significantly slower than the pace in which innovators tend to change. And it gets reconciled first in litigation and later on in actual legislation. So we're seeing this move in different paces across the world, and I think that's one obstacle. The second obstacle is legacy. There is a lot of legacy tech in banking. Even if you think about how banks have faced the fintech phenomenon across the world, the reason why fintech moves so fast compared to banks is because they have almost no legacy. They all rely on a very brand new tech. And interestingly enough, fintechs are probably adopting digital assets faster than banking in the traditional sense. So that is one. And then I think the third is what speaks to Midnight is if you are a financial services company and you have your data written on a public database immutably and anyone can go and probe, that is probably breaking quite a few banking regulations. There's almost everywhere you have banking secrecy acts or banking secrecy laws. So if you do that, you're immediately in breach of existing regulation, even if you're trying to do some of that. So I think that itself is reason enough for people to come and check on Midnight, because I think there is a middle ground between being able to do digital assets in any shape or form and doing digital assets in ways that you can ensure that you're going to be abiding by the regulation that you're already subject to. So I think those three things they're all moving. They're all being worked out. And I think in due time, regulators will learn that not only they can enable innovation, but also benefit from innovation. And we can certainly talk about that, with regards to Midnight and enabling selective disclosure and other forms of compliance enablement. The legacy is an investment, is a capital play, and gradually this has to happen. Otherwise, you'll stop innovating. So this has been going on for a few years, and it will go on for a few more years. And in terms of being able to comply with existing regulations by using digital assets in a new form of infrastructure, well, then there are blockchains such as Midnight, which, I think it's addressing this problem head on. And it's not only for finance. I know that my background is in finance, but back in the day when I was working with enterprise blockchain, let's say, I was pretty much exposed to other industries, and the problems are very similar. And when you think about data protection regulation, it doesn't differentiate industries. More industries will have more or less added regulation, but in general, general data protection rules go across the board, across all industries. So it's not just in financial services.
Got you. Let's talk more about that infrastructure. And we heard from Charles Hoskinson on a previous episode about the Kachina protocol, and that being one of the cornerstones of Midnight smart contract architecture, the ability to have shielded and unshielded data within the smart contract architecture. Could you explain a little bit about this dual state system and how that represents an advancement or basically enabling some of the barriers that you described before to kind of melt away if you start using Midnight for some of the applications we're talking about?
So Kachina is a smart contract architecture, and it enables this dual state system. And what it means, when we think about a smart contract in the now traditional blockchain sense, we think about a program that's running on the blockchain. It runs on the execution layer. It checks data from the blockchain, and it might check data off chain that is being brought in by oracles and all of that jazz. Now, when you talk about Kachina, that also happens. Kachina also runs on chain, and it checks the state of the chain. That's why we call the dual state. It checks the state of the chain, the changes in state from block to block, what changed, what triggers. And by doing that, it interacts with, in the case of Midnight, it interacts with the proofs, and it makes decisions based on what the proofs are and what they're, where they are available, what they represent, and the business rules are interacting on chain with that. But when you have a Kachina architecture for a smart contract, it also interacts with off-chain data, meaning data that is not sitting on the blockchain. It will look into your computer as your wallet interacts with the smart contract, and it will check for proofs and data that reside on your computer. With the Kachina architecture, we can say that the smart contract interacts with on and off chain data, and your data never leaves your machine. So one of our architects says that it never leaves your box, right? So the beauty of Kachina is the ability to preserve the data that is off chain on your computer. And if that data needs to reach into the blockchain, then it writes its set of proof, and then it writes the proof on the blockchain. So we have a clear separation of the states between on-chain and off-chain, and Kachina preserves the data on the off-chain state, as one calls it, and allows this to be, by nature and by design, a data protection architecture for a smart contract. So that's the edge that Kachina provides to blockchains, is the ability to operate on-chain state and off-chain state, on-chain state being proofs, off-chain state being the data.
Great explanation. Thank you for that, Mauricio. And again, it's super important when we understand that this is a very secure system because the data never leaves your box. As you said, the data remains within your perimeter. And other systems where data is being sent to multiple parties for computation, or even with VPNs, when you're sending data to a VPN about your browser, yes, at the other end, people can't see your browsing information, but who do you think the VPN is seeing data from? You're moving the point of where the data exists for computation or encryption, but you're never really, in those situations, having a fully data protected system. Whereas what you've described there, I think, is very, very different by way of fact that you can make sure that the data remains on one system, never leaves, and you're creating proofs. Super powerful. I want to talk about the rest of the roadmap as well. We're going to get into the good stuff. And as Midnight progresses towards mainnet launch, what are you defining as kind of the key milestones and developments that the community should look forward to? So how are you chunking up the roadmap? What are the key stages, and what are we going to get? What are the community going to get at each stage as we go through?
So right now we are at a stage of the roadmap, and we're dividing the roadmap in stages. So right now we are at a stage of the roadmap called the DevNet. So you probably, if you're in anywhere near our socials, you've seen Anthony, myself, the DevRel team talk about join the DevNet, come play with the DevNet. And DevNet itself is a sandbox for developers to play with. And why not try to break Midnight, right? We're at the stage where we want to be tested and stressed. And we're very fortunate that we have 1.5 thousand people in our Discord channel, all excited about doing things with Midnight. And we get a lot of wealth of information from that field. So right now, you can consider DevNet as a public alpha, I want to say. That's where we are in terms of the maturity of everything that we're building. And we are now building more features to launch a proper testnet. So in terms of a testnet, in general, in blockchain means that this is the staging area for anything you want to launch on a mainnet. When it comes to a pre-mainnet blockchain, testnet is the most advanced stage of that blockchain up until mainnet. So we're moving towards that. We are doing a couple of things to prepare for that. The first thing is that we're changing our cryptography libraries to Halo 2. Halo 2 will allow us to do down the line a lot more in terms of zero knowledge recursion, both in contract state and in the chain state. So it is something that creates more compact proofs so that it's a lightweight way of dealing with proofs within the context of smart contracts and in the context of the blockchain itself. So Halo 2 is one of the things that we're implementing as part of our stack right now. And the second thing we're doing for testnet is that we're handling upgradability. I think that's the easiest way to say it. We want to make sure that anything that we add to the blockchain, to Midnight, as we evolve Midnight in terms of features and in terms of technology, can continue to work. So upgradability is critical for us in terms of spinning out a DevNet and minimizing the number of times we are going to need a chain reset. So the more we can do ahead of time to prepare Midnights to become upgradable, that is the goal. That's what we're focusing on the testnet. What it means to users once we reach testnet is that they can deploy ambitious applications, ambitious smart contracts, and ride that wave up until mainnet. So this is what we're working on in terms of testnet.
And that snark upgradability is quite important in the long term as well, I suspect, because the space of zero knowledge is moving very quickly. There's a number of different solutions, curves, research coming out constantly around how to look at the performance, the security, the scalability, the size, additional use of hardware, additional use of many other factors to improve the performance of zero knowledge. And so that's going to mean that over the course of time, there's a high likelihood you'll see evolution in snarks on the protocol or on different protocols. And we're really preparing with Midnight to have kind of, I don't want to call it future proofing, but at least reducing the overhead for developers or people who've built applications on Midnight when it comes to upgrades in ZK and snarks in future. Have I got that about right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the highlights in terms of being able to upgrade that is, while there is a lot there already in zero knowledge, this is a brand new field. So if we find something that is groundbreaking that will allow us to do better, faster, cheaper, we need to be able to give that at a very low level in the protocol without too much disruption. So yes, I think a point here is we want to make sure that Midnight can offer the best UX across the blockchain landscape, and being able to upgrade without too much of a hassle is right up there.
Fantastic. Let's talk about incentivized testnet. Tell us what that means for you, what that's going to mean for the community.
So when we talk about incentivized testnet, what we're aiming at, it's not that it's going to change testnet. It's just a milestone or a stage in the evolution of Midnight. And at that point, we will be able to start mapping out activities on testnet. So we incentivize community participation in preparation to launching mainnet. So at that stage, we want to be ready to really foster a on-chain community of builders, block producers, partners, integrating bridges, wallets, integrating oracles, and all of the surrounding applications that can make a blockchain successful. And for that, we'll add what the name of the stage implies. We're incentivizing the people to participate. At that stage, we'll also be able to introduce the payouts to block rewards. So if you're a block producer on Midnight, at that stage, we're going to have all of the ledger features ready, still on a testnet. So all the ledger features ready, and the payout process for you to get rewarded with test tokens as we move along. The mechanics of the tokenomics will also be available at that stage. So we should be pretty much mainnet ready when we reach incentivized testnet, and then we need to grow the community for a successful launch.
Got you. Sounds good to me. And then we're on to mainnet, right?
So we established foundational software, we established foundational community, then that is when we launch. Like when we have that critical mass and we are ready to go, by that point, we should have mainnet ready with all of the code audited, the bridge to Cardano established, the third-party wallets. We want to launch with a big number of wallets. So by then, we should have many partners lined up and implemented. And then obviously, we can celebrate the mainnet launch with the first block created, the Genesis block recorded on chain, and then we're off to the races. So yes, mainnet is the gala event of all of this journey, is when we start taking Midnight's benefit to the world in a proper mainnet. But we don't stop there, right? I mean, mainnet, if you're a product person, launching your product is not the end of your journey, is actually where it begins. So in my mind and in my team's mind, we're looking forward to get that ready, get that launched, because the goal is to actually find product market fit. That's the journey of a product person. And mainnet is what earns us the rights to go find product market fit in spades. And there's a lot more playing, right? So we're thinking about, I mentioned ZK recursion early on, enabled by the Halo 2 implementation. Recursion in cryptography is the ability to get a proof and then wrap it in another proof, and then wrap it in another proof, and then wrap it in another. That's recursion free. And with the zero knowledge recursion, at that stage, we'll be able to enable the smart contract level recursion, meaning that the state of your contract can be wrapped up in a proof, and the next change will be wrapped up in a proof with the previous proof. And that way you have a small data footprint for your smart contract state. That would also be then enabled for the chain state, meaning that Midnight's entire state can be wrapped in proofs. And then the next block gets created and it gets wrapped in a proof with the proof. So it creates this light state that can be used for multiple uses, including interoperability. So this is something that we're very much looking forward in terms of cryptography development. We will introduce a fast BFT consensus. So we're going to work on fast finality. And this obviously is aimed at, more importantly, enterprise uses. So this is important for us to continue to research and implement. And last but not least, something that is very important, and Charles has spoken about this a few times, is Minotaur. Minotaur is the name of a paper that was published by IO in, I think, the University of Edinburgh with the research team that we have there. And it's a pretty wild concept. I mean, I've been in blockchain for 10 years. And when I read the paper, I'm like, this is insane. And what Minotaur describes is the combination of multiple resources to produce a block, meaning you can get the blockchain secured by multiple types of proof of stake, proof of work, and even a permission committee in combination. And it balances the security across these different resources, enabling different types of resources to produce a block and be rewarded by the block that is produced. This creates more diversity, and we talk about diversity in the context of decentralization. If you can't rely on, say, a Cardano SPO, a Midnight SPO, a ETH validator, or a Bitcoin miner in combination, it gives more resilience to the overall community of validators or block producers in ways that other one resource only blockchains might not have. So it's one of those plays that speak to a very low level of the infrastructure of a blockchain, but it's beautiful to see. So this is one of the things that we're going to continue to pursue to enable that across Midnight. And, you know, if I got this right from Charles, also in the context of other partner chains, which is the ecosystem in which Midnight comes to life. So yeah, pretty fun stuff that we have coming up.
It's always exciting to be a product guy. A super powerful, super interesting roadmap. And I can assume from what you're saying there is the long-term vision for Midnight is that there are multiple other chains. We're talking about working with other ecosystems, other consensus, other types of validator out there in the universe. It starts with Cardano, but the intent is that Midnight is working, integrating, and being validated by multiple other ecosystems. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think from all of the chains that I worked with and built on, Midnight is the one that carry this kind of ecosystem ethos that closer to the heart. And I think this is a byproduct of what Cardano has built. And we're spinning out of Cardano in terms of being launched from Cardano is very important. But it's not exclusive to Cardano. The ability to interoperate with other chains, especially at such a lower level of the infrastructure, is, I think, testimony to the research that preceded us and enabled us to be Midnight.
Love to hear that. Let's talk a little bit about the community experience or the developer experience as we go through these different steps, because we've talked about we're at the DevNet stage at this point in time, or when the show goes out, we'll be at DevNet stage. Following on to testnet, incentivized testnet, mainnet, what's the likely change that's required, or what does the experience feel like as you're a developer going through those different stages? Is it seamless? Are there changes that will need to be made? Are you going to be having to announce updates, upgrades? How are we going to try and make that as seamless as possible for a developer as we go through?
So one of the things that is different in my experience in doing Midnight is that the developer relations team is sitting with product. So it's almost like I have the responsibility of paying attention 100% of the time to the actual people that are partnering with us in this journey. So Diego and the team and the DevRel team are doing great work, engaging with the community, fielding feedback. I mean, don't get me wrong, these guys can talk, and they do, and we're happy to have that. But as a nascent system, there are occurrences. So we find things that need to be fixed. We go and fix it, and sometimes we do need to do what we call a chain reset, right? It's a DevNet, it's a sandbox, and if we find something that needs either emergent care or a more extended, investigation, we will communicate as we have with the wider community and keep everybody abreast. So I think the responsibility of having the finger on the pulse with the community by having DevRel integrated with product is meaningful. And we're trying to bring more of that feedback into the future features of the product roadmap. So we respond to them, and we, as I said before, I think, if we honor the ambition of having the best UX in the world of blockchain, that means that developers come first. I mean, we are here to serve builders in this space, and I want to make sure that we are honoring that mission. So absolutely, and in return, what we expect from the community is be honest. Tell us what you need. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what else would help you solve the problems in the real world that you're trying to solve, and let us bring that together as part of our stack, so you can get on and build the world as you see it. So yeah, absolutely, getting the feedback. It's been amazing. I mean, I can't talk enough about the community. It's been amazing to engage with the people there, and being able to see the curiosity. People start come in, and they kind of wary of what the hell Midnight is. But I think as time goes on and they get to install the packages and write some code and play with some of the example apps, and then start to veer off and find their own way in building data protection applications, is what we want to see. So I'm happy to support that community, and in return we're getting the feedback that we need to fine tune the product to their needs. And that's not all, right? This is just the developers. We're now starting to build a community of block producers, the people who will secure the network as we move along the stages that we went through. And this is another group of people that are important for us to understand what the pain points are, how they understand the importance of their role into the network. And obviously, as we grow and the more SPOs or block producers we have, more decentralized we are. So yes, we want to grow that community as well. And as we move along, other partners. We talked about wallets, we talked about oracles, we talked about bridges. These are all important in a blockchain ecosystem. So yeah, this is the type of community we want to build, and we're starting really strong. And I think the reason why we are where we are is because we made the decision of launching a DevNet early on. I mean, you can argue this could be, better in one way, better in another, but the fact that we have a Discord community right now with, 1,500 people that are active every day, that are asking questions and trying things in the system this early in the journey, is a wealth of opportunity for us to do it right. So we absolutely want to honor that.
So it's not just coming in and breaking stuff. It's also about being able to create new features, create new experiences, improve the documentation, improve the code base, improve the developer experience. Obviously, breaking stuff is important. And I'm sure you've got some fond memories of moments where things didn't go quite according to plan. But it's nice to hear that it's kind of code development at this stage. It's not just, okay, come in, give us feedback and go out. It feels like it's a group of like-minded individuals starting to work towards building technology that they can understand, or that is already understood, and therefore, oh, well, zero knowledge wasn't that inaccessible to me. Now I know where to go next.
Yeah, and I cannot, leave out the support we have from other IOG teams. I mean, they have been the name partner chains is there for a reason. So yeah, a nod to the partner chains team, and also the Lace team, who have been amazing, enabling us and allowing us to continue on the journey to build Midnight. So yeah, shout out to them. Shout out to the partner chains and Lace teams. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And for those people listening in, what are the platforms or mechanisms that are available for the community to continue providing feedback, to engage with Midnight? Obviously, we've got the website. We've got docs.midnight.network. Say it 3 times so you don't forget it. Docs.midnight.network. Say it with me, Mauricio.
Docs.midnight.network.
All right, now we've got that covered. If you want to find our documentation, you can find it there. But what are some of the other channels or the other ways in which the community can engage with you, the DevRel team, and Midnight more broadly?
So we have an active Discord server with multiple channels. I mean, there's a memes channel, obviously. We have that. Gotta have that. But we have dev support. We have a chat room where the devs are exchanging their ideas. The Devo team, is all day, and our community management team is all day there. So if you have any questions, I mean, it is accessible through the Docs website. So absolutely take a look and bring your questions and take a stab at midnight. But yeah, definitely the Discord is currently our most active channel in terms of interactions. We do have our socials. I mean, if you go to Twitter or X, as they call it now, we're also on LinkedIn. So those are two social channels where we also have a presence, and the team is always monitoring. And I mean, again, permissionless. Come talk to us and come build on Midnight.
And don't forget the Telegram for announcements.
God, I forgot the Telegram for announcements. Yes, and we do have the Telegram. But right now it's unidirectional. It's for announcements. So yes, and the Telegram for announcements.
There we go. Everybody's in different channels. People like to do different things. If they've got their laptops out, if they've got their phones out, we're trying to cover as many bases as possible just to make sure that the team are accessible, the content is accessible, the code is accessible, and that we make it as easy as possible for people to build with us, which is powerful. Mauricio, as we wrap up this discussion, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground, but what's your long-term vision for Midnight? How do you see it transforming the landscape of Web3 and blockchain technology over the next few years?
Yeah, this is a long-term vision, but I think Midnight will serve as the entry point for enterprises to finally break into blockchain and finally benefit from the various degrees of automation that blockchains can enable, both between enterprises and their users in a way that not only they'll remain compliant to data protection regulations, but they're now tapping into having self-liquidating assets where they can do a lot between a liquidity and an asset of any kind, and being able to have more programmability in the assets that they own and in how they behave. With the world becoming more and more AI driven, maybe that is the time where you want your data protected, so AI doesn't come scraping your data and doing something funny with it, and you don't have any idea where it went. So I think it's important that if data is the new oil, you want to make sure that it is monetized when it can be, but it is also protected when it has to be. So I think it's in that space, and I think we'll see Midnight thrive in broader terms in the long term. In between now and then, it's probably going to be some more Web3 based, with the crypto community coming into support and finding other ways to do their crypto things, which I think is also something that will start a matter. Because as much as decentralization, I think data protection doesn't matter until it really, really does. And when it does, then it's too late. So you might want to play ahead of the game there. And I think Midnight will play a part in that transformation.
And if I can ask one final question, what legacy do you hope Midnight will leave on the industry?
I think Midnight is going to be the most famous, unknown piece of infrastructure in the internet of the future.
I like that. Let's develop on that a little bit more if we can. So what you mean to say is that this is infrastructure, so it's not something that's necessarily in everybody's minds. Users of applications don't run around thinking about AWS. It's that sort of territory?
Yeah, I think when I think about this, I think more like TCP/IP kind of vibes, I don't recall the last time I checked what my IP was, and I keep using the internet like 24/7. So I think being ubiquitous, but also inconspicuous, those are very difficult words for a Portuguese native speaker, I think is where the trick is. Because I think it was Steve Jobs that said, when technology works, it seems like magic, right? And I think that being invisible is one of the things that blockchains need to become. We're still too close to the infrastructure, but I think by blending these two things and playing in its strength, that's where Midnight will earn its stripes, in being that piece of infrastructure that everybody uses, but nobody talks about.
So there you have it, ubiquitous and inconspicuous. That wraps up our fantastic discussion with Mauricio Magaldi, head of product at Midnight. We've gained incredible insights into the mission of Midnight, its innovative uses of zero-knowledge proofs, and the exciting roadmap up to Mainnet and beyond. Mauricio, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your expertise. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to follow us on social media for the latest updates and more exciting conversations in the world of blockchain and data protection. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the potential of technology to transform our world. Unshielded is brought to you by Midnight. To find out more about how the Midnight Network is helping everyone to build a more equitable and accessible internet, visit our website at midnight.network. And remember to search Unshielded on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode.